Scott from Ride It, Wrench It, and today I want to discuss some critical fastening points that we found on trips that will come loose while you're riding your motorcycle. And I just wanted to kind of go over the bike and give an overall checklist of bolts and nuts that is a good practice to check periodically and on a regular basis to be sure that they're just not coming out. Okay, the first place that I've often found that bolts come out of or work their way loose is the control housing bolts. It's going to be these two here, and then underneath there's one up here. These will often come loose and your control housing will wobble around, and that's on both sides. And then while we're up here at the handlebars, another point that I found that a lot of bikes will get loose, or items that will get loose, is the mirrors. So you'll have to come underneath here, and there's one bolt under the bottom that you can tighten to keep your mirrors tight. And those are normal. They'll just work their way loose from the vibrations of the bike. Okay, the next place that I've had multiple problems with, the shop gets bikes in quite regularly with the same issue, is with the bolts on the entire shift link mechanism. Oftentimes your shift lever bolts here will come loose, and your shift levers will be loose. If you don't keep those tightened, or if you can't tighten them, and that little gap tightens up, what will happen is it'll spin, and your shift link rod will round out, and you have to get that replaced. The other one is on the inside of your shift linkage right here. It's actually way down in there. It's an Allen wrench. That's a common one that'll get loose. Obviously, when you're shifting, this thing's moving up and down all the time. It puts a lot of strain on the connection between the shift link and the shift rod. The shift linkage going to the transmission itself, this will often come loose, and then this side here will do the same thing. Now another critical one, I mean, this is super critical. My previous bike had this issue where this shift link that goes into the transmission onto the transmission rod will often come loose, and when it does, and this moves around, it'll round it won't round the rod out because the rod's made of a harder steel than the shift link, but it will round the shift link out, and you'll push down one time, that'll spin off, and you'll be stuck in gear or out of gear, wherever it ends up being. So you'll have to get down in there with an Allen wrench and tighten that. So check this often. I mean, you can wiggle it, and you can, if you hold your shifter down, you'll want to move it side to side. This one here too. The back one, the rod will move a little bit because it's moving in and out of the transmission, but it shouldn't move back and forth, and you'll know you're good. But if that happens, and this one back here, your rear linkage goes out, the only way to fix that is you got to pull the entire primary off the bike to put a new linkage on, and hopefully you'll have a warranty. Otherwise, it's quite a bit of work to do that. Okay, the next problem that I've found, and this happened to us actually on our trip this past summer, is your muffler bolts, or if you have slip-ons, this clamp with this bolt holds it onto, it won't even come loose. It's just that the clamp will loosen and your whole exhaust will end up shaking and twisting on the bike. So this is a good one to keep up with, because you'll be riding down the road sometimes, you'll start hearing a clanking, and it's actually your muffler or your slip-on that's come loose at this point. Okay, in conjunction with the clamp for the exhaust, oftentimes this rubber piece right in here will slide out and it'll start clanking around. Mine actually is loose. I need to replace it. You'll want to check these bolts as well. They usually don't come out. It's usually the rubber piece that'll slide backwards. I did find that on this bike from the manufacturer, when they put it in, they put this in from the front, which it should come in from the back, and it kept sliding out on the trip, and my exhaust would start rattling on me, and I'd have to pull over and fix it. So I finally turned it around and brought it in from the back like it was supposed to, and it solved that problem. But you will get wear on that rubber piece to where your exhaust will shake more than it's supposed to. So keep an eye on that. Okay, the next point, this is pretty common. Harley actually did a recall last year on the 2 recalls, to be honest with you, because people's saddlebags were falling off. I would just say every couple times you open your saddlebags, check your saddlebag twist locks. Make sure that they're tight every time, because if those come out, you're going to lose your saddlebag. And then with the saddlebags, if you come down inside of here, all the way down in here, there's a rod, a metal rod that goes into the hinge, and that rod will sometimes slide out either forwards or backwards. So you want to check that rod, and if it's starting to slide out, you might have to take a screwdriver or a punch tool and push it back in. If it starts wearing too much, you may have to replace the actual hinge mechanism in there, because that rod will have wore it down to the point it won't stay in anymore. But if you don't check that, you could lose the lid to your saddlebag. Okay, another point that will sometimes work its way loose is the bolt that holds your air filter on. It's just held on, the cover's just held on by like some double-sided tape. And so periodically come in and check this one bolt, because if it comes loose, obviously you'll lose your air filter and your housing. Okay, another thing to check is all of the bolts to hold your highway pegs on. In the case of mine, I've just got the one bolt right here that holds the whole thing on. Margaret has a couple bolts on her Harley Davidson 360 highway pegs. Hers came loose one time on the road, and it was hanging down, and I happened to look in my mirror and see it, so we pulled over and fixed it. But that's a good critical point to check. You don't want it coming down and then turn the corner and having it grab the road, which could flip you over the other way and cause an accident. Okay, another place to check, and on a street glide, and it's a little bit harder. I'm not going to tear it down for the video. If you really need to look at that, you can watch my handlebar video on doing a 2015 street glide special handlebar installation. But the bolts that hold the handlebars on will often work their way loose. Even with thread lock, they'll work their way loose. There's a lot of force that goes on in these handlebars, not just riding, but when you're picking the bike up, when you're turning the bike. If you're in competition, you're always jerking on the handlebars to turn the bike. So you'll end up having to take your blinkers off, just these two bolts, and then there's two bolts here that hold this nacelle on. This nacelle will come off. It's got a notch in it, and you can just pull it off, and then if you get a long Allen wrench, you can get it down there and get to the front two bolts and tighten them. If that doesn't tighten them, you're going to have to actually loosen your fairing, lift it up to get to the back two. Okay, the last thing that I've had common problems with, seen it at the shop and on the road, or just for myself, is the lowers, the bolts that hold your lowers on. There's three of them. There's one down here, and then inside, there's two inside that hold it on to your engine guard, and those will get loose, and your lowers will start rattling a little bit. So you'll want to keep up with those as well. Okay, so those are just some common bolts or points that on a bike that I've experienced personally, and that we experience at the shop quite often, that will come loose. I do want to mention that the way you ride and the riding conditions, like if you're on gravel roads, for instance, or bumpy roads versus highway versus a casual rider or an everyday rider, is also going to affect the frequency that these things come loose. But these are the common things that do come loose on the bike that you might want to get in the habit of checking just for your own safety. So I hope this helps. Hope you enjoy the video, and hope to see you at rideatwrenchit.com, and appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my channel.